Welcome to Wealthy Mind, where we talk about all things finances, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the surprising.
Welcome to Wealthy Mind. I am your host, Misty Rose Gold, International Success Coach. And today I have back with me Todd Huettner. Hello, Todd.
Hey, Misty.
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's good to be here with you.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Yes, I'm glad that you're back on our podcast. This is great. I know that you have amazing businesses and they serve an amazing purpose in our world. So we've talked about your lending business a little bit on our previous episode. And today I really wanted to highlight your Denver Divorce Professionals business. So let's give the audience a little bit of background and history. When did you start this business and why?
So I actually began doing divorce consulting and helping people through the process in 2003 into 2004 when I
Hmm.
started lending. I had people who would come to me and they would say, "Hey, we agree on a lot of things. We don't want to go to court. We want to be fair to each other, but we want to protect ourselves. We want to do all of this for our kids. And
Hmm.
we just don't know what we don't know. We don't want to screw this up
Yeah.
and just help us." And so informally, I started working with them. And within a year, um, I had 15 clients that I'd been working with for couples, mostly couples
Mm-hmm.
who come to me. And so that's where it really started. And it was just giving them advice on how to move forward to separate their finances without just destroying their financial lives and their credit. And then from there, it evolved into what is now Denver Divorce Professionals, where it's a standalone separate entity where people engage me for everything from that same thing to
Mm-hmm.
professionals engaging me to help their individual clients, maybe participating in other mediation or cooperative or collaborative efforts, or to even being an expert witness and testifying in court for what people can and can't do, or how they might be able to um, retain the marital residence or things like that.
Okay, so this part of your business world chose you. You
Yeah,
didn't choose
yeah.
it, it chose you.
I said that this morning to I was having breakfast with an attorney, and I'm just like, we were laughing. We both kind of wound up in places we never imagined, and frankly tried to avoid on several different occasions in life, and here we are.
Uh-huh. I understand that fully.
Yeah,
Everything that I do chose me. I didn't choose it. So.
yeah, and it's you're good at what you do, and that's what people
Mm,
kept telling me. And finally, I just quit resisting and was like, all right, I can help a lot of people. I'm good at this, and now I see the joy and the fulfillment from it.
mm,
I had some people who didn't. I mean, I never told anyone I did this until about 5 years ago when I formally was putting Denver Divorce out there,
mhm,
and people that I'd known for a long time are like, "Wow, I didn't realize that. That must be really hard." And I was like, it is, but not really, because I see all the mistakes and unnecessary pain and frustration and
mhm,
just friction between families, couples that hurts their kids. So it's their finances, it's their relationship, their ability to go parent to help them get the best outcome they can, avoiding these mistakes or saving people from absolute financial ruin
mhm,
with some really big mistakes. And all of a sudden, that's when I just saw, this stinks, but wow, there's so much going on here. People just don't even know about. It's not that people are making bad choices. They're uninformed or they have information that's not within the context they need it. So that's really all it was. And again, it's not something that I chose, but
mhm.
is something that I'm good at and that really brings a lot of fulfillment to help people.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And, I've known you for a couple of years now, and I know that you have an incredible expertise in just finances in general. So I appreciate that you've put yourself out there and you've surrendered to this thing that chose you because being divorced myself, you don't know what you don't know. And I wish I knew you when I was going through my divorce because it probably would have been more beneficial in the long run.
Yeah,
But
I hear that a lot.
it is what it is. Like, I can't go back and change the past, but certainly I can help people become aware of what you do and how vital this service is. I know that there are a few here in Colorado, a few divorce consultants like yourself, but I don't know if they are specialized in the finance department as much as you are. So, do you know about that?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle, and that's why it was actually really hard to describe what I do because
Hmm.
people want to put a label on something so they understand what you do. Oh,
Hmm.
you're a lender. Well,
Right.
yeah, but I do all this other stuff, so it's not screwed up when I get it and I
Yeah.
can't do anything with it. Oh, so you're this. And it's like, well, not really. And I actually had one person say, it's kind of easier to figure out what you're not because you're not an attorney, you're not a financial advisor, you're not a CPA, and I'm
Hmm.
like, yeah, that's one way to put it. So at the end of the day, divorce financial analysis is what I do on the consulting side, and it integrates with the lending side because at the end of the day, the hardest thing to take care of is the real estate in any divorce.
Hmm.
When it comes to retirement account, you can split them to the dollar. So they're you can swap them back and forth. You can split them in any way, whether they're retirement, non-retirement. That's really easy. The part that's hard is real estate. You can't cut a house in half
Right.
unless you want to sell it, then you just take the proceeds. But most of
Hmm.
the time, people want to keep the house for the benefit of their children, stability, neighborhood, family, friends, things like that, at least in the short run for a few years. And that's where it gets really hard. And then you tie that in with we've got to be able to um, buy out someone's equity. I mean, after the
Hmm.
housing crisis, it was who got stuck with the dang house. And now it's how can I afford to buy out my spouse and not give away my entire retirement? So how can
Hmm.
we balance that? How can we do that? And the newest thing that's occurred in the last couple of years, after having record low interest rates, we've had interest rates declining roughly for a quarter century, 20 to 25 to 30 years. All of a sudden, rates shot up, and
Hmm.
now the average interest rate on a loan out there is 2 to 5% lower than current market. So people are wanting to learn how they can keep their existing loan
Hmm.
and buy out their spouse, get their spouse off that loan. So that whole piece in the middle, that implementation is what I specialize in because there's a ton of nuance between how we take a perfectly legal and a financially fair agreement and integrate that into an actual successful implementation where everyone can do what they're supposed to do and not wind up getting stuck having to sell the house or just create a lot of friction and acrimony between the parents as they're trying to co-parent
Hmm.
ongoing. And so that's really where I operate, where not as many people do. And there's a lot of people who've been in lending for a long time, and there's a lot of people who've been doing divorce financial analysis for a long time, and they just continue to miss meeting in the middle where they both understand
Hmm.
each other's requirements to get agreements structured. Like today, I was just reading an agreement earlier today is a draft agreement, and I've got to go through it and make some changes in order to allow the wife who's going to keep the house and buy out her ex-husband's equity in the home. And they needed to make some changes to their agreement or it wouldn't have worked right.
Hmm. Now, I know a lot of attorneys refer to you. They refer their clients to you because they're not financial experts as you are. How does that work?
It works in a couple ways. Sometimes it'll be where a couple is working cooperatively through mediation. So whether it's collaborative, cooperative, there is participation where they're amicable and working together.
Hmm.
And so the attorneys together may refer me as a neutral. And so in that situation, I technically would be working for the couple, for both parties together. And I have
Hmm.
an equal responsibility to both of them to run numbers and help them figure out different things, educate them, really just look at their options and figure out where they are and where they're trying to go and help them figure out ways to do that that are tax efficient and just meet both of their needs. It's not very different from an analysis perspective, but one attorney will call me instead of both, or the client, and then
Hmm.
they'll say, "Hey, I need you to help me through this process," and that can vary from low conflict all the way up to pretty high conflict. And it's the same analysis though. It's what do you want to do? What are the options to do it? But then what does your spouse want to do? And how can we make that happen for them? Because the only way they're going to get to an agreement is to give them what they want. So selfishly, to get what you want, let's figure out what they want. And then at the same time, if they're going to try to go do something and keep the house, and you're going to go and do something else, if they can't go through with that, then you're stuck too. So it's really at the same time, whether I'm working for a couple or one party, one spouse, I have to look at both sides of it anyway. So that's
Hmm.
really where attorneys, mediators, therapists will bring me in to say, hey, we need to figure out this house thing. We've got to nail it. We've got to get it right. We can't screw it up. Can you help them? And so I,
Hmm.
I do a feasibility analysis that is what I call figuring that piece out from the housing and mortgage perspective. So again, it might be two attorneys together or an individual attorney or other professional who wants me to help their client.
Sure. So what I'm hearing from you is that you like to look out for the best interest of both parties. If both parties are involved, you're looking out for the best interest of their finances and their
Yeah, I
home
mean,
situation. Is that correct?
yeah, there's can you do it is very different than should you do it. So I always look at a client's perspective to see where are they going to be in 2, 5, 10 years, and
Hmm.
does this make sense?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's some pretty counterintuitive things that might make sense longer term, and having a different perspective. And a lot of it is just what I've learned over doing this for 20 years. And that's the biggest difference that really makes me unique, I think, is just that perspective of
Hmm.
seeing every which way it can go wrong for 21 years. And so it's always looking out. And again, hey, it's really hard sometimes. I know you can't stand your spouse,
Right.
but this information is a tool. It's a tool to help you get what they want. Or sorry, help you get what you want by getting them what they want. Otherwise, you're never going to get an agreement. You're going to go to court, and that is really
Hmm.
bad. It's a
Hmm.
crapshoot. It's expensive.
Hmm.
You'll really regret it, and your kids pay the ultimate price for and winding up in court.
Yeah. And you can save people a lot of money by avoiding the court process, by,
Oh, it's a
you
lot.
know, visit with Todd first. And if a lawyer needs to get involved, he can recommend a lot of amazing lawyers, right? So, um, I really appreciate that you're looking out for the best interest of the people because you're not emotionally charged. They are. Whoever's going through divorce is emotionally charged. It's one of the highly emotionally charged situations that any of us can face. So they're not thinking clearly most of the time. Anyone going through that process or has gone through it, they know that they're usually not thinking very clearly. And you come in as an unbiased party to bring light, to bring perspective, to bring solution, as where they might just be wrapped up in the emotion of they're pissed off at their spouse, or they think they're powerless because their spouse is a narcissist or whatever the case is, right? But you're able to bring that truth and perspective to people. And I just value the service that you put out there. I think it's vital for our culture these days. Divorce is happening every single day. And if you can make the process for somebody going through that experience much easier, it's amazing. And I know you as a person, and I know that people cannot just count on your financial expertise and understanding the divorce process from a legal perspective, but they can also count on you as a human being, that you are truly looking out for their best interests. You're not just trying to take their money, but you love people. You love what you do. You love making a difference. And that I think is more important than anything else is that you provide all those levels of safety and security for people where you can just be their rock through this process. The divorce process sucks and everybody needs a rock to go through it. So, I mean, for those who are listening that might be attorneys or people who are going through divorce or they know somebody going through it, just pay Todd to be a rock. Like, that's worth it. I think so.
I had a client and I joked about putting this on a t-shirt, but divorce sucks. We just make it suck less. So she's like, that's so true. You should make t-shirts. I'm like, have to be the right crowd. But no, I mean, it's just it's who I am, and this would be it would be miserable. I wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't being able to steer people to, hey, look, be selfish, get a better outcome, but don't stick your kids with this, the
Mm,
receipt for paying the price of all this
right.
silliness. And years ago, I had lunch with a gentleman who's very well known in the Denver family law community, and he gave me some really great perspective. And he said, I could have made a lot more money because, frankly, conflict is profitable, but
Hmm.
it's just not who I am, and it doesn't fill me. And so
Mm,
he said, there are those cases that are very draining, but this fills me, and I couldn't have done it this long. And you see so many people who, um, emotional wellness of professionals in family law is a big concern just as an industry, because so many people are just torn down by it. And I think a lot of it is just the perspective they take, and it's also just a lot of the conflict. So trying to steer people towards seeing that this is better for them, it's better for their kids, no matter what happened and how much anger, frustration that there can be, this is still going to be a much better way to come to your own agreement, stay in control, keep it private, and at least stay out of court. And I mean, that's one other thing too, is stay out of court. Even if you arbitrate, it's at least private, out of court. You can pick when it happens, who's going to make the decisions for you.
hmm.
But most people end up being able to agree on a lot of things. And
Hmm.
so that's where they just don't know. So many people don't know that they think if you hire an attorney, you have to go to court
Right,
or
right. That's the
things like that.
assumption.
Yeah, and they don't know that you can get help from what we have in Colorado now this year, limited legal paraprofessionals. So it's basically for a simple divorce case, an LLP can be a more cost-effective approach for people. You
Mm,
also can get an attorney unbundled, and that's where you just consult with them for a few hours. So what I found is that most people want to stay out of court. They don't know there's all these options for how to engage professionals, whether it's attorney, financial, or other. And they
sure.
have a lot of misconceptions that if that they're gonna fight or they're gonna go to court. And frankly, if you call the wrong attorney, you will
Right,
possibly wind up there. But you can find professionals who respect your desire to stay out of court and work with your spouse and do different things. There's definitely great professionals out there that allow you to have, as you say, an amazing outcome to something that's just not, we don't think of as being good. And it's not. No one gets married hoping to get divorced, but it happens. And
right,
it's there's a lot of times when kids and everyone are much better off if you can help people navigate this process. And I tell people sometimes I'm a guide and just showing the way, and other times I'm a
mhm,
Sherpa where I'm doing the heavy lifting and carrying everything and doing a bunch of financial analysis or other.
sure, 100%. Now, you talked about attorneys, and some attorneys really do care about their people, and those are the best referral partners for you. So, if we have attorneys that are listening, how can you help the attorney get a better outcome with their clients and maybe take some of the stress off of their plate? How does that symbiotic relationship help the attorney?
Well, there's really several different ways. One is a lot of attorneys just don't understand the complexity and they don't know the things to look out for, or they know enough and that creates a false sense of security. At the
Mm,
same time, there's a lot of other financial and lending professionals that they have a ton of experience and maybe they have a designation or a certification, but they don't have enough experience specific to divorce. And so that's where a lot of these problems come up. So just helping, the biggest thing that I really think, and it's hard to explain it. I tell people it's hard to just let me show you. But with some attorneys that when I work with them the first time, they're just like, wow. this information would have been so helpful on, they just list off these cases.
Hmm.
So like with my feasibility, I'm giving them all the information that they need in advance. So really quickly they can see where things are likely to go, where they won't go, because I just isolate all the variables that are going to matter to their client. And it usually we can boil it down to three, two to four. So that
Hmm.
just simplifies their process, but they have it in advance and doing mediation prep so they can come in prepared. And if it is adversarial and the other attorney isn't bargaining in good faith, so to speak, they can run circles around them. But at the end of the
Hmm.
day, I just say, hey, we really just give you the information to protect your client, and then also be able to point out when the other party can do something when they say they can't, or know that they can't when they say they can. So you again can protect your client and get a really good outcome. And then it's just being involved and helping them work through, like I did earlier today with this agreement by reading a draft before it's final and just pointing out, hey, here's a couple things that are required. We have to have this in order to do what you want us to do and what the other party is requiring us to do, the husband. But at the same time, here's a few things that are going to come up later that are going to be either a pain in the butt or this one, they'll fight over it. Let's clear it up now because it's not in here. And
Hmm.
I promise it'll come up. After 20 years of doing this, it's just there's a lot of little tricks that are there. So it really just helps them, give them the information they need. They can't answer some of these questions for their clients and just helps
Hmm.
their clients. It reduces their clients' anxiety. A few weeks ago, I had a client say, you know what, I don't know the outcome, but I understand what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and I know it's going to give me the information to make an informed decision.
Mm.
And that, she said, that's just totally taken away all my anxiety and stress. And
Yes.
she's in a position where she's now able to really get rid of that high emotional state and just be calm and start to go through and make better choices and decisions that are
Hmm.
informed instead of reactionary and just very fearful.
Yeah, and usually we regret any decisions that we make from fear, from stress, from, the highly emotional
Absolutely.
charged state. So I'm glad that you're able to provide that relief for people so that they can make their informed decisions because it's so much of it is unknown, right? And the unknown is what really stresses people out to the max. And that's where
Yeah.
all their fears will surface and all the things, right? So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that you provide that service for your clients, but I also appreciate that you're a team player with the attorneys. So I know a lot of people may make the assumption that you compete with the attorneys, but you actually don't. And I know we've had this conversation in another professional setting, and we've had
Yeah.
to like let people know in a networking group, like, here's how Todd works with attorneys. There's no competition. So to get it straight in the public's head and to help attorneys that might be listening, um, how do you work as a team player with them? I know you've already kind of touched on it, but this was not the focus. How do you work as a team player with the attorney so that the public knows and the attorney knows that you're not there to step on their toes? You're
Yeah.
there to work with them. How
And
does
that's
that look?
somewhat, it's somewhat of the showing and trying to explain because there's different scenarios that can come up at different times. But at the end of the day, one is I believe everyone should get some legal advice prior to signing their agreements. There's a whole host of reasons. One, they'll feel better about it. They won't have a bunch of anxiety at the last minute because they didn't and now they wish they had, which
Mm,
is two choices: either stop and go backwards, which doesn't always work very well for everyone else, or you sign something you're not comfortable with. So, number one, they'll feel better about it. It can avoid mistakes, and there's no mistake that is going to cost less than a few hours with an attorney.
hmm.
Um, you'll also be in a position where if both sides get attorneys, there's less likelihood that they have to be looking over their shoulders, that they miss something that their spouse could come back later on and open up their divorce again, which would just be,
Hmm.
it's really expensive, but it's also just um, uh, very difficult to co-parent when that occurs. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really just getting good advice. And so that's where I try to explain where they can work with people. I, I work with attorneys who respect their clients' desires to get different
Mhm.
levels of service. They can be flexible and just do some consulting with them, or maybe they have a need and desire for a little bit more help just with the process. At other times, there's special situations. So There are, uh, there can be substance abuse, there can be domestic violence, there can
Yeah.
be complex finances, there can be deferred compensation, and all these different factors that have very different legal implications. And I'm not in a position to be able to give that advice. So I can highlight all these things they need to ask their attorney. And I can
Hmm.
highlight what we need to double check with a CPA or a financial advisor. And that's really where the team aspect comes in, because the amount of information that is in the law, that is in the tax code, that you need from a financial planning perspective or from a lending and real estate integration, it's so great that no one single person can really be the master of all of them and keep up with it, because they all keep
Mm-hmm.
changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where, if you know who to work with, and then it takes a little feeling out sometimes, but I customize my approach to each different attorney and how they work with their clients as far as timing, cadence, and some of them want to drive the car a little bit more.
Yeah.
Others are perfectly fine saying, "Hey, just I'm here. Let's go along for the ride and let me know when you need help." So it's really just pairing that, the attorney's personality and how they work, with the right client as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. So I love that you are a team player, and I'm seeing that you understand your expertise, but you also understand the expertise of the attorneys. You understand when you need to bring in a CPA or a financial advisor because you know what your lane is. Even though you're a financial expert, it's different. It's around money that is related to the divorce process, and lending comes into that, right? The mortgage process will come into that. So you understand how you serve people. But I mean, just for me, I'm a team player too. And when I'm working with my clients, I defer to their expertise because I don't know everything either. So it's a very honorable way for you to move forward in business instead of, oh, I know it all and, being in competition with everybody. So I really appreciate that. And I hope it gives anybody listening like peace of mind. Like Todd is really here to be that team player. He's on your team to have the best outcome for your divorce, right? Whatever that looks like, it's the best outcome. And for the attorneys, for them to be able to say, I can rely on Todd to make sure that we don't miss anything. Because then that falls back on them if they do, and it makes them look bad. It makes their firm look bad. It makes everything look bad. Word of mouth is everything. So when you have people with, especially attorneys, if they have a situation or a case that they're dealing with and there's an unsavory outcome, that's going to be negative word of mouth, and they don't need that. So even if they have to pay a little extra money or the client has to pay a little extra money, like I know like attorneys can put you on retainer and just have your expertise at the ready, which is awesome and amazing. And if they do that, it might cost them a little bit more money right now, but it's going to save them more and make them more in the long run. Because if they have every case with an amazing outcome or a positive outcome, or even just a good outcome, because wait, they brought in Todd to make sure that they didn't miss something, they're going to make way more money on the back end. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's just having people. Some attorneys are, have a perspective of, well, we do the best we can, or we can't be perfect. We just have to be good enough. We just have to get it done. And my point is, yes, those are all true statements, but there's an awful lot of opportunity to improve, and my motto is simply a better way. And
Mm-hmm.
getting a team aspect is really key to that. And so many times someone misses something, or we catch it just kind of offhand. I take a ton of CLEs. I present and train a bunch of law firms and judges and magistrates. And
Mm-hmm.
I do all of those things. Not I have attorneys like, well, why are you here? This is a legal thing, and it's a law education. And I'm like, well, I need to know more about your perspective and what you guys need, so I can inform you when a client mentions something, or I know to ask something. And
Mm-hmm.
so I can calculate and do a lot of things with identifying potential problems on tax side. I'm not a CPA, so I always say, let's go check with your CPA. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll have more historical knowledge about the couple's finances than I will, and they'll maybe find something that we didn't even know about, and the client didn't think to tell us. That happens all the time with me when I'll find things on a credit report that they just don't realize. And sometimes it's as simple as a joint account, or an authorized user account that we need to take care of. And it just prevents arguments or other things later. Or the attorney will make a statement or the client, and I'll catch it and be like, wait a minute. And maybe I asked 3 or 4 times and there's nothing there, but that one or two that makes a big difference just in the last few weeks. I mean, I've had one that was a $18,000 debt no one had identified that was still out there. Another time saved a couple $13,000 just being efficient tax wise on how they transferred some money between the two of them. And another where we found that a loan was assumable and they didn't know that it was, and we saved $80,000 uh,
Mm,
in 5 years. So there's a lot of ways where I know what I can do for people and the value that's there, but
hmm
more often than not, and I like literally 70% of the time, if not more, I find little things along the way that sometimes turn into really big things where we're just saving people tens of thousands of dollars. Much, I mean, that's huge, but then even it's
hmm
just the stress and the other pieces of that. And no one person can do that. So it's really just, I always say, get the right person to do the right thing at the right time, and you get the right results. And that's what it's all about. So it's really
Yes.
just working with different people, and it's fun meeting and working with new professionals, which happens every week. But it's also a lot of fun because like I have a case right now where I'm working with someone I've worked with for years, and it's just we automatically know what the other one's thinking, and we just move
Mm,
really quickly and really provide um, just great service to the clients to help them get what they need. And everyone looks good when you have that perspective because you really get
mm.
a great outcome.
I love that. And I love when I can find partnerships with clients or power partners or whatever, where we respect each other's expertise and their knowledge. And we just vibe off of each other and feed off of each other so well and produce an amazing outcome together. So I
Yeah,
appreciate that you show up in the world that way. Let's go
so much more
ahead.
fun.
Huh?
I mean, we get to the same outcome, but we get to a better one, and it's just a lot more fun along the way
Yes.
when you can just, go back and forth and, figure it out, brainstorm it, and optimize everything. And you know you really got the best possible scenario for everyone.
Definitely. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you. I do have one more question before we
Mhm.
wrap up. For the divorce consulting side of things, can people from all over the states reach out to you or just people in Colorado?
Well, it depends. And so there's no requirement, like from a licensing perspective, from state to state, just a consulting perspective. And I can offer a lot of help for people. And just depending upon their needs, that's where I'll just say, hey, let's understand what you're really looking for. Because if I'm not the right person, I can give you some advice,
Mm-hmm.
and then just point you in the right direction. Or, hey, I can be along for the ride and do a piece of it, and then we can just get some other people. And the reason why is because all the laws which affect the financial calculations and all those different things can be different state to state. And sometimes they're not that different, and sometimes they're really
Mm-hmm.
different. So it really just depends. I've given a lot of advice to clients who are out of state just with over the years. And so it's something that I do, but I always want to make sure it's the right fit because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to just, get billable hours. There's no ego here. It's let's get the best solution. And I can oftentimes provide just a little oversight, help, and get you going, and then step back, and that's it. And other times, yeah, I can do exactly what you're looking to do, and then, it does where you are is not necessarily material to that.
Okay, so anyone in the United States can reach out to you if they're facing a divorce or know somebody that is. Do you give a consultation?
Yes, so I will um, give them some initial 30 minutes that we can talk through, kind of figure out where they are. And that's a business development thing that I've just always held to because I
Mm-hmm.
know, and I get why a lot of professionals do charge. For me, though, I feel it's part of business development. It's part of giving just to the world, and you give out good things, and it
Mm-hmm.
comes back to you tenfold. And that's always been something I've done. So a little bit of time to understand where people are and point them in the right direction, or understand if it's, yes, this does make sense. People, I think it's so unusual these days, or it's becoming more and more unusual these days, that it stands out and people appreciate that. And the fact that I didn't just try to do everything and hey, sign this agreement, sign this retainer. And again,
Mm.
there's times when that makes sense, but I prefer to just say, hey, this is a little business development, and if I give you some free, a little bit of time and advice, that goes a long way. And if I don't end up working with that person, it's amazing how many times within the next 6 to 12 months, then they, bump into somebody in their life, friend,
Hmm.
neighbor, coworker, family member, and then they call me back. So that's
Yeah,
what
and
it's all about.
they have a referral for you because you did the right thing. You showed up to help, even if it
Exactly.
wasn't beneficial financially for you. So I love that because I know that that's the only way to make a huge impact in the world and through our businesses is to make that emotional connection with people. And you want them thinking positively about you so that when the situation does arise, they can say, "Oh, I have a professional that you need to talk to." And guess what? The person gets the help they need. And maybe it would have been such a shit show that it caused them a heart attack where you were able to save that from happening because you brought them peace of mind. You brought them the rock that they needed, that they can trust and rely on, who also has the expertise to know what role to play and when to bring in another expert. So when you're going through the divorce process, you don't know any of that. You don't know, most people don't even know where to get the forms, right? So
Yeah.
it's a scary process from start to finish. It's like, yes, you make this decision to, okay, we can't deal with each other anymore. This relationship has run its course, like whatever the case is. But then what's the next step? And people automatically assume that they have to reach out to an attorney. Well, that's not the case. Going through divorce myself, I understand the thought process behind all of this. And what we don't know as the general public, all the stuff that you can take for granted because you are so well versed in this. But for the rest of us, where do we find the forms? Where do we get, like just the basic steps in order to make this happen? So I love that you're there to provide that information and you can guide people to, hey, go to this website, get the forms from here, or maybe you already have the link for it for people in Colorado. So I just really appreciate that you're making that step, the all the steps of this process easier for people. So even if the initial question isn't about finances, people can still reach out to you and say, "Hey, where do I go? What's the first step? What's the second step?" And I love that you provide that service for people.
Well, thank you. And oftentimes it's just, well, think about these things. Are you really there yet? Have you thought about this or that? And so sometimes it's just giving them some additional things to think about because
Mm,
it's a very long decision process. It's a very big decision.
it is.
And and then, sometimes that's the community service I provide as part of this family law community, both here in Colorado and
Hmm.
across the country. So it's just, I think if people had a little bit more of that perspective, might be a little bit more cheerful world.
And the other person I'm thinking of is the person that needs to get out of the marriage and doesn't think they can because whoever they're with is very dominating and very abusive. I know that you are a good sounding board for people like that. So I just wanted to highlight that for a moment.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know. I mean, here in Colorado, financial control, coercion, and other things like that is considered domestic violence because you're controlling domestic relationship, someone within that relationship using money as the tool, not violence. And so oftentimes, and there's also a lot of misconception. I spoke to someone several months ago, and she was talking about her friend, and she goes, "Well, she's going to wait to do anything until she can get a job because she wants to see the kids." And I was like, what do you mean?" "Well, if she doesn't have a job, her husband told her she can't see the kids." And I'm like, "Well, that's not really how it works. Um, you don't have to have a job to have parenting time." So
Mm,
there's a lot of, I mean, misinformation out there that people just don't understand or realize, or um, and that's where it's just getting a little bit of simple advice and being pointed in the right direction can
hmm.
really help out, and then getting the right professionals at the right time is just huge. And that's another thing too, is I always tell people so many times they want to, oh, I need to call this attorney, I need to call this person, and it's like, hold on, unless you're in a dire situation where you've got personal safety and other things, let's
Hmm.
think about this. You have to pick the path. Can you work together with them? Can you be amicable? Can you go that route where you're cooperating in some sense And if so, you want to pick professionals, particularly attorneys who can support you in that path. So if you call the wrong attorney, or just an attorney who may be great and they're an awesome litigator, well, they're not going to be as well suited for the path you may want to take if you want to come to
Hmm.
agreements with your spouse on your own. So I always say you want to really look at your path, try to talk to your spouse about that, get as much buy-in as possible. You know, sometimes you can't, right? They can go straight to court and require everyone to go there if one person does that. So it's this balancing act. But if we can, talk, create trust and find a way to show them that there will be better options, then we can get the professionals to plug in to support that path, and usually get far better outcomes.
Yes. And for those people who are in a marriage where they know they need to get out of it and they don't think they can, please reach out to Todd. I have somebody in my professional world that I'm just waiting for the right time to connect Todd with, and it's a man, and the female, the wife, is the breadwinner. And he's in this thought process thinking, I can't leave the marriage because I don't make enough money yet. So he doesn't know his rights. He doesn't know what he's entitled to as being a man with making less money than his wife. So for situations like that, a lot of people automatically assume that it's the female that's in the lesser position financially. But in this day and age, there are plenty of women that make more than their husbands. So for the men that are stuck in that situation, please reach out to Todd as well.
And the finances is definitely a reality, and sometimes you know, you, sometimes you have to just you just have to move. Uh, whether there's it's not something, sometimes obviously there might be uh, physical violence or harm, but in other
Hmm.
cases it's too caustic. And if we can get some separation, but then all of a sudden now you're paying for two households.
Right.
So you just want to be able to look at those things, see the reality of them, and then just make a plan. And that's where, if you can start talking instead of taking action, you can create more trust. It takes a split second to erode 100% of the trust, and it's really hard to create it. And that's one thing I tell people, is taking unilateral action. If you have to do it, I get it. But at the end of the day, if you can talk things through, I say telegraph what you're going to do, talk about what you're going to do before you go do it, and maybe wait longer than you think you would need to, just
Hmm.
so that you can not look like you're acting unilaterally, because there's so much fear involved that all of a sudden, if they feel that they're fearful of you getting too far ahead, or you're going to go call an attorney that's going to put them at a disadvantage, then all of a sudden it's a race to the bottom and they're going to go beat you there. They're going
Hmm.
to go do this first. And it's just really difficult. But if you can get people to be open to just pausing and thinking and talking and planning things out, and then getting the right team and the right path, you just get really much better outcomes.
Yeah, I appreciate that advice because a lot of people can jump to conclusions, and then the person with the most money gets the best attorney and they win, right? So uh, I know that there are laws to protect people, but when the man is not the breadwinner, there isn't very much in place to protect them, from my understanding. So,
Well, not necessarily, but there's a lot of misinformation, but there's also a lot more emotional. There could be a lot more emotional aspects there, um, based on that as well. I mean, right or wrong, there may be a lot of shame involved with,
right.
I can't do this. And it's not necessarily, there is a lot of that's gender related, but a lot of it
Hmm.
also can just be um, non-gender specific, where someone just has a lot of shame that they let their family down, their children down. What are their parents going to think? What are their friends going to think? What's their church going to
Mm.
think? So that's really hard for people to come to grips with, and really figure things out. So there's a lot of emotion there that's just layer after layer, and there's several things in life that are the most stressful things: moving, buying a house, getting a new job, the loss of a family member. And I mean, this isn't death, but it's a loss of a family member when you go through a divorce. And so we're layering on many of those things, where someone may be re-entering the
Hmm.
workforce after 10 or 20 years and just feel totally lost about what that means. And so there's just a lot of different aspects that can really um, take an emotional toll, or just create a lot of emotion. And it's really hard to, I mean, by themselves, finances can be really difficult and emotional for people to walk through. And then
Hmm.
you layer on all these other things and it can be really challenging. And so it's just all part of helping people through the process.
Yeah, so you're helping them gain financial perspective, but also emotional perspective, and I appreciate that. And the divorce experience, there's a death. You're grieving the death of the relationship and the marriage. So maybe the person didn't die, but the relationship did.
And
So,
one other thing too is people will manifest their emotions in many different ways.
mm,
Sometimes they'll say things that we know they don't really mean, but they'll say it, or they'll act in ways that seem a little
mm,
crazy, and it's like, oh, they're just gone off the deep end, and it's like, well, from their perspective, it can be rational, and sometimes they're trying to cover pain and they're trying to
hmm,
cover sorrow, but not letting anyone see that. And so
right.
you get people who just behave kind of erratically at times, and I always just try to have empathy and say, hey, I can't understand their perspective, but there are a lot of reasons they may be doing this other than the fact that they're a narcissist or other. And I know that that's a very common thing in divorce, but if you ask anyone these days, their spouse, 100% of, almost 100% of the people are married to a spouse that's a narcissist. So I'm kidding. Like they both say the other one is, and at the end of the day, there's a lot of just that emotion where
Hmm.
people feel just through the actions and not telegraphing these things and doing these other aspects, and then having these crazy emotions that manifest themselves in things that they say and do. it's
Mm,
it's really easy to feel that way. And so there definitely is some component of that, but a lot of it is just relationship aspects as well.
yeah, for sure. And especially if you guys have kids involved and you're going through this process, Todd can help you see the perspective that is unbiased and emotionally not charged. So please reach out to him, regardless of what your situation is. But when there are kids involved, please do not sabotage the kids with your anger. Don't sabotage your kids with revenge. Just please don't.
Yeah.
Like, let's look
I
out for the best
I'll have
interest of the
people
kids.
that finally I've had a few people tell me, and they're like, man, for a financial guy, you talk about an awful lot of other stuff. And it's like, well, it's all part of the process. And
It
so
is.
my approach, it was created through 20 years of just working with people and knowing how to do certain things, seeing what worked. And I've learned a ton from clients who have done things in very creative ways, and I'll suggest those to other couples. I've adopted some of them into my process, and then
Mm,
on the other side, I've seen all these for 20 years of people coming to me after the fact when it's broken and they're needing help trying to fix it. So I've seen every
mhm.
which way to mess it up, and so many times the kids are affected all along the way, and that's where I just really try to help them focus on that and say, look, my approach is fairly unconventional because it's functional and just based on 20 years of doing this, but you know, help you out along the way, and just again focus on common objectives, common goals, and that's a lot easier in one sense when you have kids, which should be the priority of both parents. Although sometimes that's what's getting a lot of the emotion involved between the parents. So
Yeah. Now, this might be a strange question to you since you deal in the divorce realm, but for people who are getting married, what is your advice?
have these conversations. Though um, I'm kind of on a mission of trying to explain to people that prenups are not for incredibly wealthy people, crazy Hollywood folks, or just people who are, argumentative, in some other way. And if if the average person had conversations about finances before they got married, they would figure out a lot of these things and address them in advance. And a prenup is basically that. It's really just a conversation about finances and how do we want to run our marital estate. If we were to separate in the future, how would we do it? And I liken it in real estate to a buy-sell agreement. If two people are buying
Mm,
a property together as an investment, or maybe two families are going to get a ski condo or something as a real common example. And many don't, but if you sign a buy-sell agreement, you just walk through what happens if one of us wants to get out. You do this before you enter into the relationship, and the the magic that I've found is the conversation. The people who go through that effort and have that conversation aren't the ones who wind up with the problems later. And so there's so many times I wish people would have those conversations. And I actually joke about people having less fear and stress and anxiety about basically getting in their birthday suit on a date with somebody than letting them look at their credit report. And so I actually wrote an article years ago
Yeah.
called "Getting Naked Financially" with
Yes.
your partner. So it's funny because some will truly would much rather show you their love handles than anything on their finances.
Yeah, 100%. So for those of you who are proactive and you are looking at getting married, please reach out to Todd and have him walk you through this process and refer you to whatever professionals need to be involved. So if you're more proactive on the front end, if by chance you end up getting divorced, it'll be a lot smoother.
Well, I just find also there's less likely to occur if you have those conversations
Mm,
and figure things out because they're much harder to have later. And you
right.
do have a prenup, just so you know. Everyone has a prenup. It's Colorado or wherever you are. It's your state family law statutes. So you have one, and it's not very
Mm,
good for most people. So, worst case scenario, you can come up with your own, and doing it in advance prevents a lot of problems. It's just like getting your oil changed and other things. You take care of things and do some maintenance along the way. Have these conversations during a relationship. You don't wind up broken down on the side of the road, needing a lot of
hmm.
professional help.
Sure. And I love your perspective on prenup. The state determines the prenup for you. So why don't you go create your own?
Everybody's got a prenup and everybody's got
Mm,
an estate plan. State of
mm,
Colorado or wherever you are has got one, and then most people don't even know what it looks like. So go check it out, and then you'll be a little more motivated to maybe have a conversation about a prenup.
mm. Wonderful. Well, I know that we went way over my usual time, but this is a very important conversation. And I just felt like we needed to dig deeper into some of the things. So I know that people will have a much better understanding of what you do. Uh, and how you can help them. Or if they're a professional, like an attorney, how you can assist their firm to just make the process better for everyone. So, thank you again for letting this business call you and surrendering to it, because I know it's not an easy one.
Well, you're welcome, and thanks for being part of the journey. And
Mm,
we've known each other for a while, and
mhm.
just different perspective, your perspective on different things has helped me serve clients and other professionals better. So thank you.
Wonderful. That's what it's all about. We're working together, right? To create businesses that are built off of integrity and people first, money second. So I appreciate working with you and I appreciate our interview today and our conversation. It's been wonderful. And I know that my listeners will be um, much more peaceful about the divorce process or how to prevent it from happening. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep. And I'm sure we will see you again. So until next time. Oh, and what is before we go, what is your website for Denver Divorce Professionals?
It's denverdivorceprofessionals.com. So
Awesome.
there's information on there. You can reach out, call, or book a consultation online. So there's a couple of different options of how to do that.
Cool. All right. Well, if you guys want somebody awesome in your corner, reach out to Todd. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty.
Thank you for tuning in to the Wealthy Mind podcast. Please be sure to download the Wealthy Mind app today and make sure to support your local Dress for Success.